Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome. See if you guys can hear me a little bit better. Welcome to week 8 of HIT 500. Can y'all believe we're already at week 8 and put my little headphones on? I feel like everything is going by so fast. It's like we were just at week 1 and now here we are at week 8. All right, now let's get into what we have in store for this week. We're going to kick things off. Keep continuing to do everything you're doing. Continue to work on your knowledge checks, continue to work on your applying reflections, continue to work on your weekly feedbacks. Now, for this week's discussion forum, it is a two-parter, all right? The first part are questions to help us really evaluate our program. 3 questions. What made you choose the HIT program? What do you like about the HIT program? And how do you feel students should know about, what do you feel students should know about the program? Now, that's the first part. The second part is, what is your top rule for navigating life? And let's talk about it. Let's discuss some things. As always, we have our math trivia question. How many colors are needed on a map to make sure that no borders will share a color? Do you know? And the answer is 4. You need 4. And math is like going to the gym for your brain. It sharpens the mind. All right, now let's get into the lesson. We're going over chapter 9, right? This is how we do it. Now let's talk about the learning objectives of statistics computed within the Health Information Management Department. We're going to relate terms like full-time equivalent employee. We're going to look at the budget, the fiscal year, variance and variance analysis, as well as payback period. We're going to differentiate between operational and capital budgets. We're going to explain the use of various statistics to operations and health information management. We're also going to look at appropriate statistics and the use and management of HIM departments. Now, health information statistics usually relates to like a unit labor cost, productivity, and staffing. But you also have your annual compensation for each employee. Now, we calculate that by multiplying the number of hours worked per year, usually 2,080 for a full-time employee, by the hourly wage, and then we multiply that number by the percentage of benefits received. The FTE, or formula for full-time equivalent, would be 2,080 hours times the hourly wage equaling your annual salary times the amount of percentage of benefits equals your annual compensation. So you have your unit labor cost determined by dividing the total annual compensation by total annual productivity. Total sum annual compensation over total sum of annual productivity equals amounts / your unit. Now, our very first example, you have 2 full-time coding professionals in the HIM department. Each code 20 records per day. One employee earns $15 per hour and is paid an annual salary of $31,200. The other employee earns $15.65 per hour and is paid an annual salary of $32,552. What is the unit labor cost for these two professionals? First, to determine the annual productivity, multiply the number of records coded by the two employees, 20 per day per coding professional or 40 per day. Okay. We look at the work days in the year, 5 work days per week times 52 weeks per year equals 260 work days. Note that the calculation does not include any allowances for paid time off. Next, determine unit costs by adding the two salaries. You have 31,200 plus 32,552, giving you 63,752. Finally, divide the total number of records coded by the two employees in 1 year. You have 10,400. So 63,732 divided by 10,400 lets you know that you're looking at about $6.13 per record. For example 2, now we have an analyst compensation and they're getting paid $14.50 per hour. We're analyzing 6 records per hour. What is the unit labor cost? Here again, first determine the employee's annual productivity by multiplying 6 records per hour by 2,080 worked hours per year. Okay, 6 records an hour times 2,080 hours a year, giving you 12,480 records per year. Determine the employee's annual productivity by multiplying 6 records per hour, because we have your 6 records, by the 2,080 hours per year, giving you 30,160 per year. Now, this is the total compensation. From here, we take the unit labor costs. We have your 30,160 per year divided by your 12,480 records per year, giving you 2,416, better stated, $2.42 per record. I'll leave that up so you guys can kind of see what the unit labor cost is per record. Now, example 3, we're calculating the cost per record based on the statistics in the table that follows. What you do is you're adding 1.24, 0.61, 0.30, 0.22, 5.92, which actually brings you to 8.29. Rounded up will give you $8.30. So this one, a little bit easier. You're taking the 5, 10, 250, 125, and you're dividing each one of these by the average request per month. Okay, so 410 is the average request per month, and you're taking that and dividing that by each of the numbers on the left to give you the cost per request. You add all of the cost per requests up and then round to the nearest. Okay, now we look at productivity. Most health information departments have productivity standards for different areas in the department. So let's say you're in a coding section and the productivity standard may be that employees should code at least 4 inpatient records per hour. In a 7.5-hour workday, taking into account breaks that the employee will take, that would be your 30-minute, 30 inpatient records per day. A lot of things that will influence different decisions, like tasks for coders, like abstracting. Maybe they have to answer the phone. Maybe there's additional information that's needed before they can even finish the task. Then you have your types of recorded codes or records coded. Long LOSs, or maybe there's a difficult clinical case that they have to work on. These are going to be some of the things you have to take into account as you're looking at productivity. Now, there's two simple formulas that we look at when we are calculating labor. You have completed work, total work output minus defective work. And then you have, of course, your labor productivity, where you have your compensated work divided by hours worked to produce total work output. So you're determining the total work output and the hours work is clear. Now, in example 4, we have community physician clinic, a large clinic with 85 providers, experiences 1,500 patient encounters per day. A coding professional is expected to code 150 records per day. What we're going to do is determine the number of coding professionals that are needed. When computing FTAs, the manager does not ordinarily round up or down to a whole number. For example, the administration may only need to approve a person working 50% of the time. So they're going to look at 0.5 FTA is a full-time employee if a full-time employee is not needed to perform the work. We look at the number of accounters in this particular case, 1,500 divided by 150, which is the record, we equals at least 10 coding professionals. Hospital HIM departments often use discharges as their method to determine inpatient staffing levels. With that, you see that there are 3 ways to audit records, okay? We perform 100% review of records coded. You use a fixed random sample audit. Now, as you can see, this requires the manager to really select a fixed percent of total records for each employee to review. Using a predetermined quality standard, work is checked and classified as completed work, or maybe something is wrong with it, so then it is classified as defective. Additional records could be reviewed if the manager needs additional information to determine the type of defect or unit all the records that have been actually reviewed. Now, we look at staffing, okay? We're still determining how many FTEs we need. We have your patient encounter, any personnel contact between a patient and a physician or other persons who is authorized to furnish healthcare services for the diagnoses or treatment of the patient. Maybe, as you see, laboratory services, x-ray, and the list goes on. Now, in example 5, at community hospital, the new HIM director wants to determine the number of employees needed in a coding section. She knows that the average number of inpatient records coded is 6 per hour. The hospital discharges an average of 65 patients per day. How many FTEs are required for inpatient coding? So it tells us to assume that the FTEs work 7.5 hours per day, and then we're also going to round to 2 decimal places. So first, we calculate the number of records each FTE can code per day. We take our 6 records per hour times 7.5 hours per day, giving us 45 records. Next, divide the number of discharges per day, the number of records coded per FTE. Number of encounters, 65. Our productivity, 65 patients, right? Our productivity is 45 because we have our 45 records, equals 1.44. Remember, we have to round to 2 decimal places. So 1.44 FTEs, or 1 full-time employee, and 1 44% part-time employee. A 44% part-time employee would work 40 hours a week times 0.44, equaling 17.6 hours per week. So that's what that part-time employee will be required to work. Another way to determine the number of employees needed is to calculate how many minutes and hours it would take to perform all the work. Then divide by the number of productive hours. So another way is that we're determining by dividing the number of patient encounters by the productivity. For this one, you're looking at patient encounters divided by productivity equals number of FTEs needed. Okay, a lot of examples. Here, an HIM director would like to know how many FTEs are needed to analyze the weekly discharges in her facility. So we look at how many are there. There are 350 discharges per week. It takes an employee 15 minutes to code and analyze one record. Using a productive week as 37.5, we get that by 7.5 times 5 days. So you have 7.5 hours times 5 days. The director determines that she will need 2.3 employees to analyze the week's discharges. You have your 15 minutes times 350 records, equaling 5,250. We have 5,250 minutes, and then you have 60 minutes in 1 hour, giving us 87.5 hours. From there, we take the 87.5 hours and divide that by the 37.5 productive hours, and that's how she got 2.3 FTEs. So here you're doing just a little bit more to get to the correct amount of FTEs needed for this particular issue. With productivity and looking at finances, we have to talk about budgets, how we're getting the right amount allocated for budgets. Now, budgets, a plan that converts the organization's goals and objectives into targets for revenue and spending. Estimates are made of expenses for the department, including wages and benefits for employees, supplies, because they're not free, travel and education, membership dues, subscriptions, postage, copying, equipment maintenance contracts. And there are so many other like small, intricate expenses that you may not even realize they have to budget into. Estimates are also made of revenues coming into health information departments. Estimates may include outsourced coding or even transcription. One thing about budgets is they are made for the fiscal year. So they're looking at a consecutive 12-month period where the organization is in an accounting period. With your operational budget, we're looking at the amount of money needed to keep us afloat, run the business. Of course, there's variance where there's a difference between what was budgeted and the actual expenses. I disagree between 2 parts. So you have, okay, I'm budgeting for $10 for a Louis Vuitton. However, the Louis Vuitton costs $1,000. What's going on, right? This information can also be used to monitor the activities of the department. You know, we have been spending an average of 50% more than what was allocated. We need to go back and determine where we are off on our calculations. So we have a variance formula where we have the actual amount spent minus the amount budgeted equals variance. A lot of us, we do this on our day-to-day when we're budgeting for our own personal expenses. We set aside amount of money that we are expected to allocate out for bills and food and gas. And then we come back to see, did we hit the mark? Were we over the mark? Were we a little bit under, right? We're checking to see what our own personal variances are. Now, example 7, determine the percent budget variance for each of the departments listed in the table below. Round to 1 decimal place. Now, these are very important, okay? Whenever it says round to 1 decimal, 2 decimals, 3 decimals, make sure you're putting it accurate. If there is a percentage or a number after the decimal, but there's nothing in front of the whole number, make sure you put 0. So for example, if your answer comes out to 0.50, make sure you put 0.50, okay? Now, using the information in the preceding table to determine the variance for supplies is 1,000 or 33% over budget. Wow. So we look at the variance amounts. 1,000, which was budgeted, divided by 3,000, okay, giving us 33%. Remember that we are converting this to 1 decimal place. Negative 3333 times 100 equals negative 33.33%. Round to 1 decimal place. Our answer is now negative 33.3%. The second part. Now, the variances computed above are examples of unfavorable, okay? This is the amount spent where more than the amounts were budgeted. Favorable variances occur when, of course, the amount spent is a less. We're like, yes, we have a little bit of change in our pocket, or equal to the amount budgeted, okay? So we look at, of course, 1,000, negative 1,000 here in training, divided by 2,000 lets us know, okay, 0.500. Convert to a percentage, you have 0.55 times 100 equaling negative 50% again. Round to the 1 decimal place. Once again, negative 50%. And you can kind of see how we were over. We had allocated for 1,000 for training. We spent 2,000. That's 50%. We were allocated for 3,000 in supplies. We spent 4,000. Okay. We look at our capital budgets. Accounts for the major assets that will be purchased during the fiscal year. We have something that we need, we're allocating for it. We're talking about our high dollar big purchases. In the operating room, this would be maybe a big x-ray machine or a robotic machine, something that's going to have a lot of money behind, like a lot of dollar signs in order for us to obtain it. We look at cost justification. Okay, we really need this x-ray machine. I know it costs a lot, but in the long run, we will recover our money. Patient outcomes will be better. The total cost of the project, we look at annual incremental cash inflow. We also look at the savings that the department will realize. And that's kind of like that annual incremental cash inflow. Like, okay, wait, right now, all of our machines are constantly going down. We're constantly have to fork out more money for replacements. Our warranty is over with. If we just spend the money to go ahead and purchase this brand new spanking type of the line x-ray machine that picks the patients up themselves and turns them over and all that, in the long run, I should say, we will see a lot better benefits, okay? So we're talking about return on investments, the rate at which cash is recovered from an investment, annual incremental cost inflow divided by the total cost of a project. Brings us to example 8. You have a new copy machine, costs $3,000. And the department will realize a savings of $1,000 per year. It's pretty good. We have to calculate the payback period for this new copy machine, round to 1 decimal place. Payback period. So copy machine, 3,000 divided by 1,000 gives you 3 years. Okay. Now, with this week's apply and reflection, you do have 10 questions, okay? 10 questions. And they are going to be based on the scenarios that you've been given. Not all of them, but a couple of them. So I randomly picked different questions to kind of work through them so that as you're navigating through your homework, through your apply and reflection, through your knowledge checks, you have a reference, okay? So the very first one I randomly chosen was at community hospital. Each full-time employee is required to work 2,080 hours annually. The table that follows shows the amount of time that 5 employees were absent from work over the course of a year. What we're doing is answering the questions below, assuming that all employees did in fact work 2,080 hours. We're using the leading zero and we're rounding this time to 2 decimal places. So what is the sick leave for employee A? 6 hours used, okay, divided by 2,080, which was the annual hours, equaling 0.00288 times 100, 0.288. Remember, we are using leading zero and rounding 2 decimal places. This 8 rounds up to give you 0.29. Okay, just leave that up for a little bit so you guys can see where this came from. Okay, 6. We're multiplying by 100 because we are getting it to a percent. So you could also put 0.29%. All right. The next question that was chosen. In September, the hospital had 3 coding professionals who coded 1,500 inpatient records, and 22 of the records failed the quality screening. What is the average number of records coded by each coding professional? So here we have a couple things we're going to look at. We're going to look at our inpatient records as well as our coding professionals, how many we have, okay? We have 1,500 inpatient records divided by our 3 coding professionals. Lets us know that there's 500 records, right? I think I went too fast. All right, so 15 divided by 3 gives us 500. Next question that was chosen. Or I should say the second part, guys. So now we're talking about in September, the hospital had 3 coding professionals. What was the percentage of records past the quality screening? So the first one, we're looking at what percentage of the records passed the quality screening, rounded 2 decimals. Okay, just to recap, this one was what is the average number of records coded by each coding professional? And this one, now we're looking at what percentage of records pass the quality screens, okay? Make sure we're still on the same page. All right, so 1,500 inpatient records minus 22 failed records gives us 1,478, all right? Now we're gonna take that 1,478 and divide that by 1,500 because that was the inpatient record. And that gives us 0.98533. Multiplying by 100 gives us 98.533. We want 2 decimal places. Looking at this 3, what is it going to do to the 3 in front of it? Nothing. 98.53%. Okay. Now, if you have had the opportunity to work on your knowledge checks, then these next 2 will just be quick reviews. But if you hadn't had the opportunity yet, then let's preview 2 random questions. All right. Now, the very first question, if an analyst is compensated at $14.50 per hour and analyzes 6 records per hour, what is the unit per cost? Well, to get that, we have a couple options. Is it 2.15 per record, 2.42 per record, 2.50 per record, or 2.30 per record? The correct answer is 2.42 per record. How we got to that? We took the 14.50 per record and divided that by 6 records per hour, equaling 2.416. But you're not going to have a $2.416, right, amount. So we round up 2 decimal places because this is money, talking about money. 6 turns that 1 into a 2, letting us know that the unit labor cost is $2.42 per record. $2.42 per record. And then our last question of the night. It's a true or false question. Performance improvement activities are crucial in helping ensure that the department is functioning at optimal level. What do you think that is? True or false? True or false? The correct answer is true. All right. So here we are again at week 8. Happy Monday. Remember that this week's discussion forum is a 2-parter. The very first part are questions. There are 3 related to the program. What made you choose the HIT program? What do you like about the HIT program? And what do you feel students should know about this program? And then the next part is, what is your top rule for navigating life? Let's share some knowledge with each other. This week, we covered chapter 9. We talked about statistics computed within the Health Information Management Department. We looked a lot at figuring out how many FTEs we need. We looked at budgets. We also looked at your unit labor costs. Don't forget our math trivia. How many colors are needed on a map to make sure that no border will share a color? You need at least 4. And math is like going to the gym for your brain. It sharpens your mind. Now we are down to the final stage of the model. We are going to the finish line fast. Continue to work hard and work on anything that you may be missing. If you have any questions or something comes out, don't hesitate to reach out. And I will be here again, same time next week. Have a wonderful week, y'all. Adios.